I'm Jason, UFC, and today we have a story about UFC middleweight contender Bo Nickal calls Dricus Du Plessis easy money if they ever fight. Bo Nickal expects that he and Dricus Du Plessis will be fighting in the UFC in the future. In the future, I guess. At UFC 290, Dricus Du Plessis and Bo Nickal both picked up big wins. However, Bo Nickal is just 2-0 in the UFC, and Dricus Du Plessis is basically the number one contender for the middleweight championship versus Israel Adesanya. So they are very, very far apart in the rankings, as Bo Nickal is not ranked in the middleweight division yet. Despite that, Bo Nickal says he was watching Dricus Du Plessis versus Robert Whittaker closely, as he thinks he will face Dricus Du Plessis and in the future, and calls the fight versus Dricus Du Plessis, quote, easy money. Wow. Okay, this is what Dricus Du Plessis, no, this is not, this is what Bo Nickal says. Oh, geez, looks like Dricus is going to finish Robert Whittaker. That's crazy. That is crazy. Hats off to Dricus Du Plessis, I believe. I feel like I respect Whittaker a lot, or maybe hats off to Whittaker. He's such a tough dude, but yeah, he got it done. Is he talking about Dricus Du Plessis or Robert Whittaker? I have no idea. Bo Nickal said to Full Send MMA, that's a fight that I'll have eventually, I'm sure. I don't know that Dricus Du Plessis beat Israel Adesanya, but I'm sure we will fight, and I think that's easy money for me. Wow, okay. As of right now, a fight between Bo Nickal and Dricus Du Plessis is not even close to happening, but perhaps in a few years. You can almost say even next year with the UFC, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Because if if Dricus Du Plessis loses, Robert to Israel Adesanya, I wouldn't be surprised if, somehow Dricus Du Plessis and Bo Nickal ends up fighting next year, but who knows? It's a scrap that will take place. If it does happen, it could be an intriguing matchup, but one that Bo Nickal is extremely confident in. That's interesting. I wonder what Dricus Du Plessis' opinion is about fighting Bo Nickal, right? Bo Nickal 5-0 is coming off of a 38-second TKO win over Val Woodburn at UFC 290 in a fight Woodburn took on just a few days' notice. Prior to that, he submitted Jeremy Pickett in the first round back in March in his UFC debut. Bo Nickal did. Dricus Du Plessis is a perfect 6-0 in the UFC and extended his win streak to 8 with a TKO win over Robert Whittaker at UFC 290. In his UFC career, Bo Nickal holds notable wins over Blonde, Derek Brunson, Darren Till, and Brad Tavares, among others. Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting story, right? Obviously, you have to respect Bo Nickal, starting to make some waves in the middleweight division, starting to call out people in the top 15 as he should. And if you're in the top 15, you're probably not calling out, you shouldn't be calling out Bo Nickal or, talking too crazy about Bo Nickal at the moment, as he's only 2-0. I did watch, even though I am a MMA casual, I did watch the post-fight press conference with Dana White. I believe one of the reporters, if not one, maybe two, asked about Bo Nickal's performance and if the UFC is looking at making Bo Nickal or giving Bo Nickal a top 15 opponent next. And from what I believe Dana White said basically no, that they have a little bit more time. So I would assume maybe one more fight outside of the top 15. I would be shocked if he got a top 15 fight next. I mean, there is someone like Chris Curtis. I believe he's ranked 14 or 13 or maybe even 15. Maybe that is a fight that the UFC could be looking at for Bo Nickal, but I really doubt they're talking about a Sean Strickland or a blonde Derek Brunson or Apollo Costa, a top 10 fight right now. I would say maybe a Chris Curtis right now, if that's a top 15 fight that they would be looking at. But for the most part, I believe that Bo Nickal is going to have at least one more fight outside of the top 15. And then the UFC will probably start looking at giving Bo Nickal a top 15 fight. Who knows when his next fight is going to happen? He won this fight in 38 seconds, so he took very, very small amount of damage. He's already had 2 fights this year, so I'm assuming at least one more fight this year, maybe even, if you think about it, that UFC card in New York City, right? Like if you're looking at that lineup with John Jones, with Stipe Miocic up there, they've put Bo Nickal on all of the top in the pay-per-views. They put them on all the main cards. So I, just throwing it out there. Like I said, I'm an MMA casual, so what the hell do I know? But I would not be surprised if you see a Bo Nickal fighting on the undercard of John Jones versus, not the undercard, on the main card of John Jones versus Stipe Miocic in New York City at Madison Square Garden. That seems like a good timeline for Bo Nickal, and a great card for someone like Bo Nickal to be on. I don't think he's going to get a top 15 opponent yet, but like I said, maybe someone like a Chris Curtis around that, 13, 14, 15 line if they really want to push it, because that would be interesting, if they gave Bo Nickal a top 15 opponent early, 10, not even 10 to 15, I would say 13 to 15 type of opponent, but not someone like in the top 10. I sincerely don't see, a Sean Strickland, like I said, someone like that. That's way too high for Bo Nickal. But let me know your opinion of this fight. It would be interesting to see what Dricus Du Plessis has, his opinion of this fight. I think Dricus Du Plessis rightfully so right now is thinking about only the championship. He doesn't really have to worry about other contenders right now. His next fight, well, I guess 100% be versus Israel Adesanya. The UFC is having a card in, I believe, Australia in September. And before the UFC 290, I think they were trying to think about having Israel Adesanya headline that card, but I really doubt Dricus Du Plessis, coming off of a second round TKO over Robert Whittaker, I really doubt he's going to be ready to fight Israel Adesanya on what is that, like one? It's almost like one. We're in the middle of July already, right? He didn't take much damage in the fight versus Robert Whittaker, but I would say give him a little bit more time. Will they put Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis on the card with John Jones and Stipe Miocic? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. That's another option. Like I said, I'm an MMA casual, so I have no idea. Maybe Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis. It definitely deserves its own headline main event card. But that it is an option, right? It is an option, right? Because of the timeline. Israel Adesanya and John Jones, they're cool now, so I don't think Israel Adesanya would have a problem being on, co-main event, especially because it's at Madison Square Garden. That's a big card, right? Like, you don't have to headline to, secure a really big bag. Madison Square Garden, that card is going to happen in November. So I expect a lot of big superstars on that card. They've only announced John Jones versus Stipe Miocic, but I definitely expect that card to be super stacked, right? And I would not be surprised if someone like Bo Nickal fights on that card, or maybe even Israel Adesanya versus Dricus Du Plessis, right? Why not? Throw that on that card, really get pay-per-view buys in. But let me know your opinion of this story. We're going to have a little bit of fun MMA matchmaking. Who do you think would win? This is such a dumb question. Like, who do you think would win? Bo Nickal versus Dricus Du Plessis, right? Like, such a dumb question at this point. But maybe it isn't, right? Anyone could get beat on any day, right? We definitely don't want to, start assuming that because Bo Nickal defeated, 2 not ranked opponents, that, everybody in the division he could defeat. But he's going to make his way up to the division sooner or later. And, we'll see what the future holds for Bo Nickal, his next fight, and for Dricus Du Plessis, his next fight. I'm Jason, UFC. Today we had a story about UFC middleweight contender, unranked, unranked at the moment. Bo Nickal calls the #1 middleweight contender, right? Dricus Du Plessis, an easy money fight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button. And please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.